Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and this is the Checkup. Welcome back to Recovery Guy. My name is Robert. I am the Recovery Guy. And as I like to say, if this is Friday, this must be the checkup. Is that right? You know, we do need that checkup, don't we? I know I need the checkup. So if you check me not checking up, then check me so I'll get checked up and checked out so I don't check out, right? So we all need a checkup from the neck up. I always need to sort of evaluate to see where I'm at. I think self-care that I talked about on Tuesday's podcast is so important because I do need help. I do need adjustments. There's not a person whose road is straight or steady all the time. Sometimes life does things to us that causes us to get a little sideways for a minute. Just recently, many of you know my mom passed away. She went home to be with the Lord. And even though, there was nothing negative about it in terms of our relationship. And, as many of you know, my mom was 93 and she'd have been the first person to say, why am I still here, right? If dementia hadn't taken hold. But sometimes, even those types of things, the expected, yet loss, sort of what I call it, kind of got me off balance, right? So we need a little help getting back on balance. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy when it comes to that because maybe we don't pay attention. Maybe we lose a degree of personal introspection or personal objectivity, right? How can I be subjective while being objective, right? How can I look at me and say, okay, I'm doing the best I can for me, but objectively looking to make sure that I'm still on the path, right? Because sometimes I get this thing and it's called denial, right? Where I don't want to see a negative behavior. I want to rationalize it. I want to justify it. I want to say it's not what you think it is and go on to live in my own little self-centered, self-serving world, right? So this is where I really think people of accountability, if you don't have people in your life that you're accountable to, I think you're missing out on so much, and it's not that people tell us what to do, but people who love us and care for us and we give them permission to come alongside us and say, hey, I really care about you and this is what I see and I think you need to take a look at that. Gosh, those people are invaluable, aren't they? I mean, they proved invaluable to me. One of my greatest mentors of all time was my pastor, Glenn Moffitt. And Glenn Moffitt died of cancer in 2001. 2002, 2002. Glenn died of cancer. And so when he died, before he died, and he would come up to me and again, he was an incredible mentor in my life and taught me so much of how to be a man of God and walk in faith and how to be a husband to Laura and really learn how to be sensitive and meeting her need. So he would come up to me though, and he would sort of put his hand on me and he'd say, are you teachable? I thought, well, I knew what that meant, because he was going to tell me something that might be a little uncomfortable. He was going to speak a little truth in my life, and I'm so glad that he did. And so now I have Laura and my children. My children all have access to my life, and they can come up and say, "Hey, Pops, I see you left here. I see you right there. I need you back on center." And there's some other people like Slow Will, my sponsor in AA and recovery, and I have other people in my life who care enough about me because I might not see the signs that I need help. And that's the topic of today's podcast, signs that I must need help. So you can go to recoveryguide.org or the major podcast channel you're listening on. If you do listen through recoveryguide.org, remember, you can even pull down the blogs as well, and you can even sign up for my newsletter. So if you sign up, Pablo has got a place on there for you, and shout out to Pablo, amazing SEO engineer, and thanks to Pablo and Jonathan and JJ and Jane, our whole team at Recovery Guy, for making that possible. But go ahead and sign up for the newsletter, and let's communicate. Let me know how things are going for you. So here's what I did. I was doing some research online, and I pulled some content from a paper, an article called Symptoms of Addiction, from Psychology Today. And I don't know if you're a real Psychology Today person, but if you really want to get in depth on recovery, you might consider them one of your resources, because as deep as you want to dig, Psychology Today can help you get there. They might even give you a shovel. So what I did was I've edited the bulleted points below to really sort of fit my direction. Some of them I've edited, others I've left in full content, others partial. But I want you to know that the complete article from Psychology Today can be found by following the link that I'm going to put in the description of this podcast. So I really do want to thank Psychology Today for continuing to provide amazing content on a wide variety of wellness topics, and also making all of their content so available. Sometimes you go to places and you read a little bit, and just about the time you get into the meat of what they're trying to say and you get really excited, they tell you to subscribe to get more content. But that's not the way it is at psychologytoday.com. I have found their content to not only be very relevant and helpful and thought-provoking, but it's free and 100% accessible. So make sure you go there and download this article to read exactly what they say, not the paraphrased version of what I'm giving you. So I think those of us in recovery, but especially those new to recovery, must pay attention to the spiraling signs that accompany addiction. So I even think, though, let me take it a step further. I think those of us who have been around a while need to pay a different attention to things. So in the beginning, if you're new to recovery, you really need to focus on the behavior to remove that as your main obstacle, right? Alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography, compulsive overeating, whatever the behavior is, whether it stems from an addiction to a substance or it's just a behavior-related disruption or destruction in your life, we need to focus on that. But for those of us who are recovered, right, from that seemingly hopeless state of mind and body of drinking or using, it talks so much about, and I really believe it, that, and I will quote Dr. Silkworth in the doctor's opinion of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says that I have solved the drink problem, right? I have solved the drink problem. I'm still an alcoholic. I'm still a drug addict, so I can never safely use in any amount at all forever. I'm perfectly fine with that. I wouldn't trade this life for nothing. But I'm easily able to control my desire. So what else do I need to do? Because certainly that was just a symptom of a deeper problem of not knowing how to live, and really not knowing the alcohol and the drugs was just my response to the pain, or the medication to the pain of not knowing how to live. Alcohol and drugs was never my problem. Alcohol and drugs was my response to my problem, right? Do you understand? And I drank and I used so much that I became chronically addicted, and I developed the manifestation of an allergy, right? So now, as it says in the big book, and I really believe it's true, or in the Bible, it talks about becoming a new creature, a new man. My mind is made new. And so even though addiction is still stamped in my DNA, as long as I handle the mental obsession, the physical allergy will never be activated. And don't you just love that? So what do I do? What are some of the signs that say I'm getting off track and I need help? So once again, going back to this article, I pulled some of the concerns that should be looked at when we evaluate where we're at in our recovery journey. And I don't care where you're at in your recovery journey. My sponsor, Jack, died when he was 44 years clean and sober, always looking at his journey. My sponsor, Slow Will, over 40 years. Buddy, over 40 years. My friend Eddie P. just celebrated 35 years. Steve, going on 35 years in September. Scotty B. or Scotty Shields, the same thing, 35 years. So all of us, we are continuing to evaluate where we are at in our recovery journey. The best way to stay on the path of recovery is to make sure that every step, right, we are guided by. The Lord, it says, is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path, right? Because we want to be walking this journey, because we would not be the first person to get off the journey when they forgot they were on one, right? Does that make sense? So just because we have overcome a debilitating, you know what I'm saying, right? Debilitating behavior or addictive habit, it doesn't mean we are ever fully free from relapse, right? Because we can relapse in different ways that would result in an addictive relapse. So staying healthy, and here's what I've come to learn, staying healthy is best promoted by continuing to self-examine. Isn't that right? The man or woman who does not look at themselves with an objective or critical eye is a fool. And I know that may sound harsh, but we are foolish if we don't look at ourselves with a critical eye, always looking to improve. And again, that's one of the reasons having positive people in our life is so important, because they're going to tell me things that I might not tell me. They're going to tell me in love. They're going to tell me in caring, right? But they're going to tell me sooner than I may tell myself. And if we respond properly and respond in the love that what they're saying was meant, they will be sure to tell us again, because they want the best for us, because the best we are is best for them. So once they do make those adjustments, and we can then make any corrections that we may make or need along the way. So here are some of the things that Psychology Today talks about, and we'll walk through them and we'll discuss a couple of them and see how they could impact us. So again, I've reworked this to fit my signs I might need help. Excuse me, take a little drink there. And maybe not so much help from the addiction, but signs I might need help in my course of living so I don't relapse back into my addictive condition. Make sense? Let's move. So here we go. The negative activity is practiced more often and to greater degrees than we intended. Sometimes we begin to slip back into old habits, right? And I sort of misquoted on last week's podcast, but what I was saying was we don't coast uphill, right? We must pedal uphill. Life is uphill. So we need to continue to practice the things that make us solid and make us strong and continue our forward progress. Any negative activity that we take on can be very dangerous. So we need to really guard against that. Any negative activity, and I'm not just talking about physical activity, but activity of the brain, activity of the soul, right? Where we start thinking things. Because before I take any action, it is set up by thinking, right? I don't just do something. I'm not impulsive. People in recovery are rarely impulsive people per se, because so much thinking had to go into our new way of living, right? It's a way of living that demands rigorous honesty, and we're honest in our heart and our mind, right? And so I can create a negative mindset, negative activity in my brain, in my thoughts. And if I start thinking those things more, then they could be realized in a tangible sense. And then that could carry on, but I would begin to practice those things in greater degree. And then one thing could very well lead to another. So another thing that is a sign of that I might need help is that I know the behavior that I'm engaging in is injurious to me and inconsistent with the new life that you and I have chosen. So I'm beginning to engage in behavior, and this can be very subtle, and this is where we really need to gauge. It is much easier to slow something down while it's moving slowly than it is before it picks up steam and really gets off course, right? Because even the smallest snowflake, once it starts going downhill, can be a disastrous landslide by the time it gets to the bottom. So understand how injurious behavior can be, especially if it's inconsistent with our own life. And this is where taking a daily inventory really becomes important. If you're not looking at yourself and checking yourself daily and don't have a daily accountability between you and your higher power or another person and your higher power, you're walking on dangerous ice. And if that ice breaks and you go through and there's no one there to pull you out, you will die there. And so you might think I'm overstating it, but we might say it's kind of like taking vitamins, right? And nutrients. You know what? I don't need it today. I'll wait. Next thing you know, we're not taking them at all. And then we get sick and we wonder what happened. The next thing to be careful of, signs that we might need help, our pursuit of the activity, negative activity, consumes an increasing amount of time, right? Just like our addiction, whether it was behavior or a substance, we did a little here, we did a little there, and little by little, it begins to encroach and consuming an increasing amount of time. Be very careful about that. Be very careful. The next thing, there's a strong desire to engage in the negative activity. It's starting to become more than a thought. It's becoming a strong desire where there's actually a pulling of you to that negative behavior. The next thing, and I love this, again, Psychology Today did an amazing job with this. And again, go back and check the entire article out. I think you'll find it interesting and helpful. The next thing is the activity disrupts obligations at work, school, or at home. It's starting to not only interfere or sort of get in the way because I'm pulling time away from those other things and starting giving time to this, but now it's starting to disrupt. It's actually getting in the way. It's starting to push out. It's starting to get in the way of my flow, right? And as you can see this occurring, I guarantee you there's going to be other challenges that go along with it, relationships. People are going to see a change, right? And if we don't let them come alongside us, maybe they won't come alongside us. So the next thing, the activity continues despite the social or interpersonal problems it causes. That's a rough one. I'm going to print all of these as part of the description and the notes, as always. So feel free to listen now and print them off later, drop them to your phone, send them to your printer, save them, do whatever you want to do. But again, repetition is the mother of learning. So if you're listening, you might as well learn. And let's go back over and cover the material. Participation in important social, work, or recreational activities drops or stops. See, we go back to the previous one. The activity disrupts obligations. So now it is starting to displace that work or that social or that school or enjoyment or recreational activities. It's starting to displace them. Oh, I used to do this on Wednesday, and I know it was important. I meet so-and-so, or I went and did so-and-so, but now I'm going to do this instead. Very dangerous. Take your inventory. Find out where you're at with that. We increase risky behavior while engaged in the activity. Wow. One thing leads to another. We're starting to push it. We're giving ourselves permission to engage in this activity, and our behavior, we become to risk more, right? It's almost like a watering down, like a dumbing down of the senses, so we don't recoil, as it says in the big book, recoil as if from a hot flame. It's kind of a warm glow. It doesn't burn. It's not cool, but it's not burning. Matter of fact, it feels kind of good, right? Danger zone. Check yourself. The next thing is the behavior continues despite knowing it is causing or exasperating physical or psychological problems. We're starting to ignore things at this point. It continues, and we know it. We know it is causing problems. Wasn't that very characteristic of our active addiction? These are things that we could be doing even though at this point we may not be drinking or using again, or engaged in gambling or pornography or other negative behavior. But we're doing these things without that addiction, without that substance, without that other behavior, because it is exasperating. It's challenging physical and increasing psychological problems. Big danger zone. And I hope to God at this point, if you did have people around you, that they're coming around you now and saying, we have a problem. You need to take a look at things. You're going down a slippery slope. This can be dangerous. I really hope you have those people in your life. I know I do. They would be lined up, circling me to say, Robert, you're in trouble. You're going down this path. There are so many signs that you need help. You need to check yourself. You need to look at some things. Finally, we engage in the behavior more and more until it overtakes the positive behavior. That's so dangerous, because once it overtakes the positive behavior, what's next? I guarantee you, if this continues and it gets to there and it goes unchecked, the likelihood of relapse is inevitable. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. You will use, you will drink, you will go back to that behavior that you learned how to displace because of how it was making you feel and the things it was doing in your life. Don't do it. There are so many signs, so many things along the way that tell us between people and that internal knowing that we have in our life. This is really to those of us who have gotten well, who are in recovery. We must continue to take a look. We must continue to understand that just because we got well doesn't mean we can't get sick again. Everyone who has had cancer and that cancer has gone into remission can fall to that cancer again if we don't make a choice to live right, period. Things come back. The wonderful thing about how we live, in most cases, cancer is going to dictate to you or me more than we do to it. We could be living a wonderful life and cancer could just decide to show up again and we were doing everything right. We may not have that control in certain things, but we have control in this area. We do have control. Staying healthy is best promoted by continuing to self-examine. Do you self-examine? Do you take a look at yourself on a regular basis from the inside out and look and see things that we don't want to see? Or go and ask people, who do you have in your life where you can go up and ask and say, where are we at? Are we okay? Do you see anything in me that needs to change? Sometimes we need to remind people that they have permission to come into our life. One of the things that Laura and I have done over the years is we promoted wellness in our marriage of 31 years based on asking each other questions. We read this incredible book years ago called His Needs, Her Needs, How to Have an Affair-Proof Marriage. An incredible book, and it examines the needs of a husband and a wife. And so at least a couple times a year, Laura and I will go for drives and vacation and just spend time together. And I'll look at her and say, you know what, babe, how am I doing? Right? I know these are your 5 areas where you really need me to promote love in you and bring out of you the best possible thing. And how am I doing in these areas? What can I be? How can I do? Give me your view of me so I know how to be the best version for you, and vice versa. And she'll say the same thing to me. Robert, where am I at in these areas? These areas are so important to me. Do you have that kind of relationship with someone or someone's in your life? Because a lot of times we might not see or want to look at the signs where we might need help. So regardless of where that awareness comes from, let the awareness be brought to you. And then make adjustments and corrections along the way. If we continue to do that, it's not going to mean there comes a time where we don't need help, because we're always going to need help. I'm always going to want to take my own inventory, to self-examine, right? Or to go to Dr. Williams, my dermatologist, and say, hey, check me out. See where I'm doing. Is there any cancer on me? Is there anything you need to cut out? Is there anything you need to freeze off? Do I need to take precautions? What do I need to do, right? That's smart, right? Wouldn't you consider that good health care? I do. So why don't we do that same kind of self-care on who we are as a person? Why make all these strides and advancements just to give them away because we don't want to look anymore? I never want to stop looking. I never want to stop examining. I never want to stop the self-correction or correction that other people bring to me that I can apply in my life. Because I always need help. I just need to see the signs that I might need help. And then when I find that help, I make that self-correction and make the adjustments, and I get back to the way of living that I've come to enjoy and love and embrace. And I hope that is true for you. Signs I might need help. Check out the description, download the points, go to Psychology Today. Let's get well together. The Recovery Guy movement is about all of us becoming the best possible version of ourselves that we can be so we can help others along the way. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Robert, and I am the Recovery Guy.